Hello everyone and welcome to Shower Thoughts. In this week's video, I'll be showcasing 10 non-legendary Pauper commanders for you and your friends to try. The biggest difference between EDH and PEDH or Pauper EDH is your commander can be any uncommon creature throughout Magic's history. They don't have to be legendary, giving you a total of 4,361 commanders to pick from at the time of recording. And even if you exclude uncommon legends, you're still left with 4,046 commanders. The other major changes are your life starts at 30, and commander damage is down to 16 from 21. If a card has been printed at both uncommon and common, it can be in your 99 or your commander. A popular example of this would be Gary. And if you decide to build a background commander, the background needs to be uncommon too. Oh, and every card in the deck needs to be common aside from your commander, which is uncommon. If you want to read more about the format and check out the ban list, check out the PDH homebase. And if you can give this video a like, it really helps out the channel. Alright, let's get into it. Let's kick things off with Tempest Heart. This is the newest uncommon on the list, and initially I was going to talk about Risen Reef, but decided that it felt too much like a Tatiova deck, so I wanted to showcase a new card instead. This card stood out to me for a couple of reasons. First, its card selection we have access to from the command zone, and second, it's a powerful creature with trample that can grow into a massive threat. Tempest wants you to cast as many 5+ mana value spells as possible to grow into a huge threat, and thankfully we have plenty of ways to cheat on big spells. The first few that came to mind were Treasure Cruise, which lets us delve cards away until it becomes Ancestral Recall. Next is Muldrifter, because even if we cast it for its evoke cost, it's still a 5 mana value spell. And finally, Wave Sifter. Pretty much the same reason as Muldrifter, we can evoke it. If you want to see all the 5 mana value legal spells in PDH, check out my Scryfall search linked in the video description below and pick some of your favorites. Next is Third Path Iconoclast. This powerful uncommon quickly usurped other token generators in Spellslinger decks and found a new home in artifact decks. Unlike young Pyromancer or Murmuring Mystic, Iconoclast cares if you're casting non-creature spells, not just instants and sorceries, so any artifact ramp, cantrips, or even enchantments will make you tokens. Because the tokens created are artifacts, we can include a Pauper staple, Thoughtcast, which quickly becomes a 1 mana draw 2. Let's not forget Impact Tremors, which was printed at common originally and just came down in price thanks to Wilds of Eldraine. And finally Reckless Fireweaver, which is a backup Impact Tremor for all your artifacts. Next is Vizkopa Guildmage. Many players, both old and new, love life gain decks. I love them because seeing a number get bigger fills my brain with happy chemicals. And the first life gain PDH deck you should build is Vizkopa Guildmage. This commander made the list thanks to my good friend Wes, who showed me the power of this creature in their Abzan food deck. Oh, and did you know their second ability stacks? So if you activate it twice, your opponents will lose 2 times the life you've gained? And even with access to only common creatures, it's easy to gain a large amount of life over the course of the game, slowly burning out the table. We have the Soul Sisters package of Soul Warden and Soul's Attendant, which basically become Impact Tremors once you activate the Guildmage's ability. If you want a backup win condition, Rotting Blight Priest is a weaker version of your commander's ability. And then finally, the card that needs no introduction, Grey Merchant of Asphodel, or Gary. This bad boy is already a powerhouse in Commander, and it's no different here in PDH. Next is Soulherder. If you love value, whether it be card draw or making tokens, then you're going to love a Soulherder. It was first introduced in MH1 and quickly became a mainstay in Blink decks from Ronar the Ever-Watchful to Rune of the Hidden Realms. Aside from the value of blinking your own creature, it also grows into a threat of its own as your opponents, or you, exile creatures. Just remember, it doesn't actually have flying despite looking like it should. While you should include Blink staples like Muldrifter, Inspiring Overseer, and Spirited Companion for card draw and life gain, there is a 3-card infinite combo you should try out here. And yes, PDH does have infinite combos. All you need is to have Archaeomancer and Peregrine Drake on the board. You cast Ghostly Flicker, targeting Archaeomancer and the Drake. When they enter the battlefield, untap 5 lands thanks to the Drake and return Ghostly Flicker to your hand thanks to Archaeomancer. Now you cast Ghostly Flicker again and repeat this process as many times as you'd like. Next is Mayhem Devil. Are you sick of treasures? You want to cause pain to your opponents for simply playing the game? Well, let's punish them for sacrificing everything. From lands like Evolving Wilds to the best frog, Spore Frog, and everything in between. And what's even better is you get to deal pain to others when you sacrifice your own permanents. This lets you build a wide range of strategies from an artifact deck sacrificing Ichor Wellsprings to the more traditional Aristocrats deck. I've decided to go with the more traditional sacrifice route, despite the fact we don't have access to Blood Artist or Zulaport Cutthroat in the 99. Thankfully, aside from our commander, we have Body Double as a way to end the game, as it'll grow when we sacrifice creatures. Next is Impulsive Pilferer, which not only ramps us, but since the ramp is treasures, we get to deal more damage. And then finally is Persistent Specimen. This is just the common version of reassembling skeleton, so it's something we can sacrifice and keep bringing back. Next is Silver Fur Master. While this Dimir Ninja is no Yuriko, this rat makes a great Ninja Rogue tempo deck. Doing a quick Scryfall search, there are only 14 Dimir Ninjas at common, which isn't quite enough for a full ninja deck. There is, however, a myriad of rogues which we can include to create a powerful tempo deck. And given the lower starting life totals, we can build a much more low-to-the-ground deck than in traditional Commander. When deciding what creatures to add, I started with all of the ninjas that have the ninjutsu ability. The best of the bunch is Ninja of the Deep Hours, which will let us draw cards when it deals combat damage. Next is the unblockable snake Slitherblade, giving us an easy way to ninjutsu our creatures into play and get in some chip damage. And the final piece of tech is the background Candlekeep Sage. This is great since we can ninjutsu our commander in and out of our hands multiple times to draw multiple cards. Next up is Shaman of the Pack. Elf Ball is a tried and true theme, and I couldn't think of a better commander than Shaman of the Pack. They provide an amazing win condition right from the command zone. And while we don't have access to the greats, such as Elvish Archdruid, Marwyn the Nurturer, or Lathriel Blade of Elves, there are still a ton of powerful common elves we get to jam. Honestly, I was a bit surprised at how good the options were. We get to play Legacy All-Star Priest of Titania, which is basically an Elvish Archdruid at common, which will generate us a ton of mana. Next is Kyrian Ranger, which synergizes with our many mana dorks to help us ramp into an incredibly quick win, seemingly out of nowhere. And finally, Lissalana Huntmaster. This will help grow our elf army, ball, into an unstoppable force. Next is Arcbound Shakiri. This commander was actually my first PDH deck, built from boxes of bulk I owned and a few pickups from my LGS. I've always wanted to build Zabaz the Glimmer Wasp, and this seemed like a great alternative. The game plan for this deck is pretty straightforward. You build a massive board of modular creatures, then sacrifice them to either Ashnod's Altar or Fling to help grow other creatures. You can also blink or reanimate your commander to put some additional counters on creatures. As I mentioned earlier, you'll want to flicker Arcbound Shakiri, and one of the best cards for this is Ephemerate. Because it is Rebound, we get to flicker our commander twice, putting 2 counters on creatures we control. Next is one of my favorite creatures in the deck, Arcbound Tracker. This 3-mana menace creature grows incredibly quick, given the low curve of the deck and the sheer amount of spells we can cast each turn. And finally, we have Hazardous Blast. This is a cheap board wipe for token decks and helps prevent our creatures from being blocked when we want to swing in for the win. Next is Botanical Brawler. If you're looking for a great +1/+1 counter commander, look no further. Unlike other counter decks such as Rishkar or Kami of Whispered Hopes, our commander easily becomes one of the best win conditions in the deck. And because its trigger is once each turn, you want to load the deck with instant speed ways to put counters on creatures you control. You can either blink creatures to reset their counters, or use one of the many combat tricks we have access to. One of the best cards in the deck is the Background Master Chef. I love being able to put counters on creatures such as Devoted Druid or Fertilid to get additional value. And speaking of additional value, Viridian Joiner is one of the best mana dorks in the deck. As it grows, we can ramp into more powerful threats, or use the mana it provides to grow Atom Wheel Acrobats, or save our board with Sporeback Troll. And finally, let's double a creature's power with Soul's Might. Ideally, you'll target Brawler with this, but doubling the counters on Iron Apprentice or Servant of the Scale is a great option as well. And finally is Kenra Charioteer. Gruul Monster is one of my favorite archetypes to give to new players thanks to its straightforwardness. You want to ramp as fast as possible using Elvish Mystic or Rampant Growth, and turbo into massive threats like Ulamog's Crusher. Unlike most of the other commanders on this list, you won't want to cast them right away. You want to save them so you can give your creatures trample like Ancient Brontosaur or Forceclaw at the right time. Aside from the mana dorks and land ramp, we also have Goblin or Narcomancer. With its cost reduction, if we cast 3 spells in a turn, it will basically have ramped us for 3 mana. Next, I want to give big threats Death Touch so we can cheat on damage. This is where Nightshade Peddler comes in. The reason we want Death Touch is so we can assign just 1 point of lethal damage to a creature and allow the rest to trample over. And finally, let's make our board actually unblockable with Barrage of Boulders. And it's also a great board wipe against any small token decks. Let me know in the comments what your favorite PDH commander is. Make sure to subscribe for more weekly MTG content. Alright, see ya!